Okay, so let's talk about SSI resources, specifically income and resources. So, just as a preface, uh, SSI is supplemental security income, and it is a secondary disability program that also goes through Social Security the same way. The difference is with SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Insurance, that is based on your work history. So
Correct.
you work and you pay FICA taxes, and then those earnings contribute to your eligibility for SSDI. It's your work history.
Right.
If you have not worked enough, or if you've worked and you haven't paid FICA taxes, maybe you're self-employed, or maybe you've never worked, but you're still disabled, SSI is a alternative program. And instead of looking at work history for the technical eligibility, they look at your income and your resources. A lot of people don't quite understand what we mean by resources, which makes sense. It is kind of what is resources in general, because they do count things differently. And then also it gets kind of ridiculous with the thresholds and everything. So let's talk a little bit about the resources specifically for what would disqualify you, and just SSI in general.
Sure. So for an individual, you have a resource limit of $2,000. So if you have something that's worth $2,000, could be cash, probably not, could be an item. If you have that, technically you're not eligible for benefits. If you're a couple, that resource goes up to $3,000. So there are some exemptions. They exempt your house regardless, or they exempt the place you live, if you own it, regardless of how much it's worth. So, let's say that you have a really, really nice house, it's worth a lot of money. Doesn't matter. They exempt that. However, let's say that you have a house and next door your parents left you a half acre. That half acre is worth a few $1,000s. Disqualified, because they'll count that.
Right.
You're not living on that. They exempt the first automobile. So let's say that you have a really nice automobile, really, high dollar automobile. They exempt it.
No problem. Yeah.
Let's say that you have a really high dollar automobile, but you also have a motorcycle that's worth $5,000. Disqualified, because the motorcycle they're going to count, and that $5,000 puts you over the $2,000 income and resource limit. The limits are really low.
Yeah.
The limits have been low for years. The representative community were like, man, that's kind of unrealistic, but that's what it is. So yeah, that if you remember that, that's the basic for the income and resource limit. $2,000 for an individual. They exempt your house and your first car. $3,000 for a couple, exempt the house and the first car.
Yeah. So the biggest problem that I think clients run into, at least the ones that I talk to, where they almost qualify, because if you have like $100,000 in a 401k, there's no discussion. You definitely do not qualify.
Yeah.
The biggest problem that I see is people with vehicles. And again, if you have two working vehicles, you use both of them, then you automatically, there's very few vehicles that are working and they're newer that are worth less than $2,000.
These days, yeah.
But I speak to a lot of clients that have two vehicles and one of them's not even running. It's 30 years old. It's like a 1996 GMC that the tags are not registered, but it's still a vehicle that is in their name.
That's right.
And maybe, do they go on Blue Book value? How does Social Security even calculate?
Yeah, they do. They'll want to know what it's like, even if it's not running. Of course, the kicker with Blue Book values, it will give you, excellent, fair, poor condition.
So it takes that into account.
Sorry, I didn't mean to pound the table. Yeah. But it'll give you the values at different conditions of the car. But you're right. These days, it's going to be hard to find a vehicle that's worth less than $2,000.
Right.
Just a little bit of information. Why is it like this? Because it's not like that with SSDI. 5 cars and you can live in the Taj Mahal, because it's based on your earnings. But the way that Social Security and the Congress look at it is, this is a pure entitlement benefit. You haven't paid anything into this.
Mm-hmm.
This does not come from the so-called Social Security Trust Fund. This comes from the general treasury. And because it is taxpayer funded, they're goofy about it. They want to make sure that if you had a 401k that's worth $50,000, why aren't you going through that first before you apply for disability?
Yeah.
And they'll make you. If you had that piece of property, that half acre that was next to your residence that your mom and dad left you, why haven't you sold that and lived off of that until it's dwindled down, and then you don't have that as a resource. And that's their attitude towards this. If you have $5,000 in the bank, why are you applying for disability to get taxpayer money before you've gone through your money?
Yeah.
And that's the attitude that they have. Again, the problem I have with the whole scenario is the 2,000 resource
crazy,
limit
yeah.
has been the same. I started in disability in 1991, and that's what it was then.
It's 2000.
It has never changed.
Yeah.
They've talked about it, hadn't happened.
So Social Security really wants to see that you're down to your last dollar.
Exactly.
Because it's basically disability welfare.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like if it's Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, that is you are telling Social Security that you're disabled, therefore you want to collect the money that you've already paid into the system.
Right.
So that's not, that's not taxpayer. Well, it's taxpayer, but it's your tax dollars in theory, right, from the
Sure.
Social Security Fund.
Right.
But SSI is literally just taxpayer dollars. You have, even if you've never worked a day in your life, you could still qualify for SSI.
Right.
And so because of that, they want to see that you actually are down to your last dollar,
Yeah,
and you actually
absolutely.
need the benefit.
Yeah, and that's why SSI monthly amounts are static, whereas SSDI, you worked at a really low-paying job, your monthly benefit amount's probably going to be low, and if you worked at a really high-paying job, your monthly benefit amount's going to be a lot higher. And then, to kind of mix up, the whole thing, you can draw both. We call them concurrent cases.
Yeah, technically.
You have an SSDI component, you have an SSI component. And but for the SSI component, you have to be under the income and resource limits.
Yeah. So for concurrent, being eligible for SSDI and SSI at the same time, that would just mean that you have worked and paid FICA taxes enough to qualify, but you're also at the income and resource eligibility. You don't have any money in the
That's
bank
right.
account, in your bank account.
Right.
You don't have a 401k. You only have one vehicle or no vehicles, so you're eligible for both at
Yeah.
the same time.
And we see that for the concurrent cases, that's what we see is, they had a decent job or even a great job, and that's exactly what happened. They became disabled. They just went through their savings. They were selling things left and right, and at the end of the day, they're like, I can't do it, and they'll apply for disability.
Yeah.
And because they went through all their savings and because they were selling things left and right, they're not over their resource limit, and so there could be a catch-all, and they can apply for SSI and SSDI. And there are times, like say if you were like a low earner, and your monthly benefit amount was below what the SSI monthly amount is, then they'll bring the SSI. You'll literally get a check that's comprised of both SSDI and SSI
Yeah.
money to get you up to that level. So that's how that works.
Which makes sense because it's called supplemental security
Yeah,
income. So it's
absolutely.
literally just supplementing
Yep.
the money that you're not getting from SSDI.
Yep.
Yeah. And so SNAP benefits, food stamps, that doesn't have any difference at all for SSI, right? VA benefits is going to count against it.
Yep.
So if you are receiving VA disability and it's a couple $1,000s a month or whatever it is, $3,000 a month, and you haven't worked in 8 years or in 12 years, so you're not eligible for SSDI, even if you're disabled and even if it would be a really straightforward case for us to prove disability, you don't technically qualify.
Right.
Because you haven't worked enough for SSDI and your income from the VA disability is too high for you to be eligible for SSI.
Right, exactly. For SSI, they only count 50% of earnings. So if you were working at a fairly low-paying job, you could still, you wouldn't be over the income and resource limit for SSI. But if it's if it's unearned income, VA benefits,
Yeah.
you get a pension, you got a trust fund that's, paying you something every month, 100% of that money is counted.
Yeah.
Well, 100% under, they give you a $20.
For some
Yeah,
reason.
for $20, but anything over $20, they count that. And of course, a VA pension or VA disability or a pension is probably going to put you over the limit.
And that's the same with household income too. So if you're married and your wife is working or your spouse is working,
Right.
that is earned income, so you're going to count half
They'll
of it,
count half
right?
of it, yeah.
But if your spouse is receiving VA disability or a pension, or your spouse has a 401k, they will count that,
Yep.
and that will disqualify you from SSI.
That's right,
Yeah.
yeah. And Social Security's definition of spouse, this needs to be said, is quite broad.
Yeah.
So if you've been, living together as spouses, even though you aren't married, you didn't go to the chapel or you didn't, the justice of the peace or anything like that, but you've been a couple for 10 years, Social Security says that you are holding out as married. That's the words that they use. They're holding out as married. And therefore, your significant other's income, if it's earned, they're going to count half of it against you.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's unearned, they're going to count every bit of it except for the $20 against you.
Is there a specific criteria they use for that? It's like you guys have been together, living together for this many years, therefore we count you as if you're married, or is it kind of a gray area?
It's a gray area, and it differs from state to state. Like in the state we're in, I think, that they recognize a common law marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And then some states, they don't recognize common law marriage at all. Social Security doesn't care, though. It's like, if you guys are holding out as a married couple, we're counting your significant other's income. So,
Right.
And that's their resources, too.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said it already,
Yeah,
you,
401k.
you have a car, and significant other has a car. Well, they're counting their car.
Mm-hmm. So that
You only get to
disqualifies you.
you only get to exempt one. So yeah, it's confusing, but it all boils down to Social Security sees SSI income as countable, and because it's an entitlement program, they're kind of hardcore about it.
Yeah.
If you're making over this, if you surpass that 2,000 threshold, or if you're married, that 3,000 threshold, they're kind of, hey, this is taxpayer money here. We don't care how, how disabled you are.
Do you have any advice for the people that they have a vehicle that doesn't run? Because I'll put it this way. This is what I hear all the time, where they have two vehicles and one of them's not running, and I mentioned that disqualifies them, and then they tell me that they'll just sell it, or they'll transfer it to someone else's name. I mean, if they sell it, and well, now that money's not in a vehicle, it's in your bank account, they're still going to look at that the same way.
Absolutely.
So if it's over $2,000, then it still disqualifies you.
Yeah, it disqualifies them, and there's also, and I'm not really clear on how long this is, but there's also a time period.
Mm-hmm.
You have such and such time period to spend that money, or else we're counting it. So, if you really want to, hear some ridiculous Social Security policy, let's say, this is kind of an aside, but I think it's interesting. Let's say that you're approved for SSI, and the back pay that you're going to get is $20,000 after my fee. So you've got 20 grand. Well, think about that. And it happens all the time, by the way. Okay, what is the income and resource limit? What's $2,000? Okay. You just got $20,000 in back pay. Well, the way Social Security gets around that is they won't give it all to you at one time. They send you a check. I think it's like $2,300. They'll send you because they figure that
You're gonna
you're gonna
spend
spend that pretty quickly on bills that you owed or any debt that you have. And then a few months later, I think it's 3 months later, they'll send you another $2,600. I think it's 23. But then they'll send you the rest. So you're still kind of in the same boat. And they give you a period of time that we figure that you will have spent this on debt or whatever. And if you don't spend it, they not only count it against you, you're disqualified.
Yeah.
They kick you off of SSI. So
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. They're giving you the period to pay bills because I mean, I don't know if most. I would say a lot of people in that in the disability scenario is you get approved. Okay, now you have all this medical debt. Maybe you've gotten help from friends or family. You need to pay your bills.
That's
So,
the big thing that we see is what they call I forget what they call it, but it's your housing expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Social Security used to count that against you. Like they wouldn't give you your full. Well, they still do it. They still count it against you. They wouldn't give you your full monthly benefit because it's in-kind support. That's what it is. IKS, in-kind support. So they're saying that you had room and board from your mother. You're living at your mom's house.
Yeah.
And that room and board is worth, usually it's like $250 or a third of your check. And so instead of sending you your whole check, they send you 2/3 of your check. Now they've relaxed that a little bit because
Yeah, I was gonna
once
ask
again
about
that's goofy, but they are it's a whole different attitude towards SSI applicants than it is for SSDI. SSDI we worked, we paid into FICA all these years. And SSI, they look at you, well, you obviously haven't paid in enough to even be insured for SSDI.
Yeah.
So you're like you said what is kind of in these times a dirty word, the W word, welfare, but it is part of the old welfare program.
Yeah, it can be cutthroat, but I mean, it's the reason it's so difficult to qualify for SSI is because you really do need to be down to your last dollar.
Yep.
Because that's not. I mean, different people have their own opinions, whatever. But the idea is that if you have $100,000 in the bank, you should not be getting your bills paid by taxpayers.
That's right.
You should use the money that you already have.
Yeah, that's exactly their philosophy. That's hard to disagree with.
Sure. Yeah. All right, I think that's pretty straightforward.